wanted to talk about Afghanistan. So the US pulling out, Australia pulling out. So, the war did technically end in 2014, that the effort ends now. It's really difficult. I heard a mother this morning interviewed of her son killed in action in Afghanistan, and she was asked if she thought it was worth it. She said, well, I hope so. And God, it was awful to hear how she was still so affected. But that's still got to be the question, doesn't it? The Taliban has regrouped. It's got serious political power now in Afghanistan. So what has the war been for?
It's a great question, Tom. I would say 20 years of pacification and denying Taliban and people that mean the US and their friends and allies, Australia included, ill will. And that, it was a mantra we first heard during the George W. Bush administration. Better to be fighting far away from the American homeland than in the American homeland. There has not been a major terrorist attack of the scale of 9/11, thank heavens, since 9/11. We're coming up on 20 years. And that raises a key point, Tom. And I was talking to a fellow think tank director in the United States, someone we talk to quite regularly. And he said, I can imagine everybody in Australia quite welcomes the fact that the US is pulling out of Afghanistan. It's sort of a reminder that the US is now really focused on China and the Indo-Pacific as a key theater. He said, just let me give you this to think about. It won't take much. It would take a terrorist incident against US interests or on the US homeland for very quickly for the US focus to go back to counterterrorism and perhaps that $5 billion a year that the US is spending to maintain 4,000 troops in Afghanistan. Perhaps that wasn't bad insurance against tamping down Taliban-led acts against the United States, giving the US and its allies space to focus on great power competition and the big whole of society contest with China. And I thought that was a telling point. But for the families, Tom, and we've always got to, I think, come back to that, the families who support men and women in uniform in both Australia and the US, this has been a long, grinding conflict, multiple deployments. I know some of those families on the US side, more so than Australia, I have to say, but there is a very real, very tangible human cost to keeping troops deployed that far from the homeland for extended and repeated tours of duty. And so on that side of it, I think we have to say, job well done. But perhaps it is time to come home. But let's hope that that pacification, that diminution of terrorist threats, that 20 years brought us, somehow that can continue.
Well, yeah, and that's a good point on that particular aspect. So perhaps some sort of solace for families.